Hi, welcome to Preps Plus Podcast, episode 20. I'm Joshua Hart, sports editor here at the Daily News. I'm here with Jason Leskiw, Preps reporter. Say hello, Jason.
What's up?
So they hear your voice. We are here this week to break down all of the action coming up. Last 2 weeks of the football season means there's lots of playoff implications at stake this week. I believe we just have one team officially locked into the playoffs. That's Nacelle. And I don't believe any teams have officially been eliminated yet. So lots of action ahead. We also have an interview with Parker Reeves of RA Long, our area's leading tackler, on tap for you as well. We'll start off with our biggest school to break down playoff action, and that's Kelso. Last week they had a huge win over Prairie. AJ Hoggett came back. Tell me a little bit about what AJ Hoggett brings to this team, Jason.
A lot. The guy has a heck of an arm. It's funny, he was warming up at halftime 2 weeks ago over playing Mountain View, and him and Quentin Nelson side by side. And Quentin Nelson's a really good athlete and a pretty good quarterback, but you know the difference watching Nelson throw next to Hoggett it's a huge difference, and I think that will really and keep in mind in that game it was an overtime game. Mountain View being the reigning league champ, Kelso, it was neck and neck the entire way, and the difference for Kelso, the ultimate difference I think was not being effective enough in the red zone. And with Hoggett, the guy can make all the throws you need a quarterback to make, and they execute in the red. There's no doubt in my mind if they had that back with Hoggett, they would execute in the red zone, with 80% efficiency. So.
Yeah, I mean you can't go wrong with the school's all-time leading passer.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of good quarterbacks through the years. Not but when you run a veer. There's not a lot of opportunity to throw, but Hoggett has certainly established himself as a passer. But they have a couple huge weeks ahead with Evergreen and Hudson's Bay the next 2 weeks on the road. Evergreen, obviously, this week. They cannot slip up in those two. As Steve Amrine has said all year, this league has as much parity as it's had in years. Those are two tough teams that are going to provide their own unique challenges. And it's important for them to start off right this week with Evergreen. They can really grab a stronghold on that number 2 seed. I don't believe it would officially lock them into that 2nd seed if they won this week. But you don't want to drop into the 3rd spot, and I'll tell you why. Week 10, you match up with the Kingco. If you're the 2 seed, you match up with Lake Washington or Mercer Island or Redmond, one of those teams. Certainly a winnable matchup for Kelso. Take away that first week with Quentin Nelson at the helm against Lake Washington. And we've known they're competitive against that team. They can play with that team. They can hang with any of those squads. You drop into the 3rd spot, you travel to Bellevue. So you don't want to, now that Bellevue's allowed to go into the postseason, as the WIA ruled earlier this year, you don't want to drop into that 3rd spot and have to face a team like Bellevue. So
especially because you might lose, like, if you have some really talented sophomores, they might move to Bellevue.
So definitely don't want to fall into that. So it's very important for Kelso the next 2 weeks. Dropping down to the GSHL 2A, a lot more complicated. We have 4 teams tied with 2 losses. Where we get, and so on paper, if we don't assume anybody wins any games, if we don't assume a favorite and pick somebody, it's completely up for grabs. But if we want to give you some idea of how the playoff picture will break down, Woodland and Columbia River both face Ridgefield and Mark Morris. Ridgefield has struggled this year, and Mark Morris is battling, I think Perkins had it at 15 injuries. So assuming that Woodland and Columbia River both get by Ridgefield and Morris the next 2 weeks, they would be locked into the number 2 and number 3 seeds. So River would be the number 2 seed with the head-to-head win over Woodland, whereas Woodland would drop to the 3rd seed, and that means that, and Hawkinson, of course, is locked into the number 1 seed. That would mean that Woodland would face somebody like Black Hills. Oh, wait, no, the 3rd seed. They would travel to WF West in week 10, whereas the 2nd seed, Columbia River, would host like somebody like Black Hills. Further down the list, you have Washougal and R.A. Long.
Yeah.
And Washougal, this is their last league game this week. After starting the season 5-0, if they lose this game this week, they're out.
Yeah.
Or very likelihood of being out. There's upsets that can happen and things that can break their way. But that Washougal R.A. Long game likely decides the 4th seed into the playoffs.
And Washougal's down one of their better run defenders after last week's loss to Woodland there.
Yeah.
So this is a game that, I know we said it earlier, don't assume favorites, but R.A. Long's got a really good shot with their running attack against Washougal.
Yeah, break down that. You saw Washougal last week. You've talked with Rob James a lot this year. You've seen R.A. Long play. Break down that matchup a little bit. For really, I truly believe for a playoff spot. Now you have to go face Tumwater as a reward, but certainly it would be a huge boost for a program that went 1-8 last year to make the playoffs. Break down that matchup this Friday.
It's going to come down to going to sound cliche, but the offensive and defensive lines and. R.A. Long's got some really tremendous rushers, got a pretty good quarterback, and their defense has been really good. So I think it's really going to come down to, can the offensive line block well enough to get Parker Reeves a big gain, or get him enough carries, get those 5-6 yard gains so that you can get the big one or 2 or 3 big ones. And that's really gonna, for both teams, I think that's true. Can R.A. Long contain the run? Can they play sound enough pass defense when the ball's up in the air? Those, it's probably not going to be often, but can they do that? And that everything right there starts up front, and really for the most part will end up front. And so. That's going to be what you're going to need to watch. I think R.A. Long is going to win this week. It's my pick.
And I think R.A. Long really found something last week against Ridgefield, and I know a lot of you will think, well, it was just Ridgefield, but there was a certain air about R.A. Long in that game that was just different. I mean, they absolutely dominated the game on both sides of the ball, and yet we're only up 7-0 at half. I mean, they controlled the defense. They moved the ball on offense. They just couldn't quite find the end zone, and they ended up, pulling ahead by a healthy margin. But I think after that 3-game skid, they found something last week, and if they can just continue that this week against a Washougal team that seems to be a little bit struggling right now. That seems to be a bit struggling right now. That would be, I think that would be possible. I'll let you set up your Parker Reeves interview. I think now would be a good time to break into that. And we are back here to break down the rest of the playoffs action, dropping down to smaller leagues as we go forward. We'll start here on the second half of this with the Trico 1A League. Castle Rock currently sits in second place in the Trico with just 1 game for them left to play, while White Salmon has 2 games left on the schedule, but they both have 1 loss, so it's going to get kind of interesting here. They both have La Center to face, right, who checked in at number 10 in this week's AP ranking. So assuming they both lose that game, it comes down to Castle Rock and Stevenson. What's that face?
What am I making a face?
Castle Rock it comes down to White Salmon facing Stevenson, really to decide Castle Rock's playoff hopes. It looks right now like Castle Rock will make the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
3 teams get into the postseason from that Trico League, that 5-team Trico League. So basically, it comes down to this: if White Salmon beats Stevenson, Castle Rock would enter the playoffs as the number 3 seed and play the EVCO number 1 seed, Montesano. While if White Salmon loses to Stevenson, Castle Rock would be the number 2 seed and play Hoquiam. So Castle Rock they could go out and really seal it by beating La Center, but assuming both those teams lose to La Center, Castle Rock's playoff positioning really in the hands of White Salmon. But it looks like Castle Rock's pretty solidified in their in capturing a playoff spot.
Yep. I'm cynical with Castle Rock. When they say they do make the playoffs, I just don't see them going very far.
Certainly Montesano and Hoquiam would both provide tough matchups. I think Castle Rock has found something the last couple weeks. They start 0-5. They've won the last 2 weeks behind a pretty dominant run game. They handed the ball off 40 times to Nathan Halliday last week, and he had like 213 yards. So if they can get a run game going, they just haven't had. They were facing teams that were just better early on, and now that they're facing more similar-minded competition, they've certainly hit their stride. But Montesano, Hoquiam, both tough opponents if they get into the playoffs there. Dropping down to the Southwest 2B League, Jason, you're going to be at the big one in the River Division this week.
Mm-hmm.
Toledo versus Kalama. Last year, this game decided the River 2B champion, and this year it will do the same. If Kalama wins,
in part,
maybe yes, correct. If Kalama wins,
mm-hmm.
the league, they're division champs.
Yeah.
If Toledo wins, though, that makes things interesting. Wahkiakum beating Toledo last week, 18-7, puts a wrench in things. I know you've been high on Wahkiakum all year.
Yeah.
Why was that?
They just they have a lot of speed. I think they have there's kind of there's an attitude, and not just an attitude, but a persistence, I guess you'd say, about their team. They're just not going to give up. I saw that a lot with a lot of the same guys during the baseball season, and there was a playoff game in Mossy Rock. They're down like 6 runs going into the 6th or 7th inning, and they win. So I believe actually that was against Toodle, if I remember correct, and really put a wrench in Toodle's season. And look, they're this is a game going back to Toledo Kalama. I think it's going to be close. I think as I was talking with Mike Christensen earlier, he wants wet weather. He knows that favors Toledo. We saw that, or you saw that last year
with Kalama on the turf. They certainly. I think Toledo was the superior team last year, obviously making the state semifinals. But you put Kalama on that turf, and they're awfully fast. And like you said, if I was Mike Christensen, I'd be spraying down that field, running on it all week.
Well, apparently he's not going to need to if some of these weather reports about this 5,000-mile aerial river rain that we got coming in, I guess apparently stretches the Pacific Ocean or something. It looks like we're going to get in the next, from Wednesday to Friday, a couple inches of rain. And, it's going to be the type of game where, if you don't have to put much weight on your cutting foot, i.e. a lot of Toledo's roster, they're a bit smaller than Kalama's, but they're not going to slip as much.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, Kalama's a great team. They've won a wet weather game already this year against Napavine on grass. It wasn't a super sloppy game, but they have done it. But I am picking Toledo this week just purely because I think I'm picking Toledo purely because I think if that field mucks up, the two defenses just rely on two totally different things.
Mm-hmm.
Toledo relies on stuffing things up and letting their linebackers make tackles. It's a lot easier to just clog the middle up or clog a lane up if you're on mud. Just make sure all the bodies get over there. Slip and slide, fall down. Not a lot of yardage. Kalama relies on penetration. It's a lot harder to get around a guy and try to cut past a guy if you're on that muddy surface.
Mm-hmm.
So if the weather breaks, you're right. I think this one's going to be a lot closer than people think. I think Toledo is upset about last week against Wahkiakum.
Without question.
If that happened, I don't know how they would break it. I would assume if it's a three-way tie atop that division, they would use a tiebreaker because it means one team is on the road. I mean, if you have those top three, which is weird because last year it was a three-way tie at the bottom, and so you had the fourth, fifth, and sixth, or third, fourth, and fifth teams all tied. This year, I think it could very well be on top. But yeah, Kalama can win the division title if they win this game.
Mm-hmm.
They have their fate in their own hands. It would be interesting to see Wahkiakum pop into that number one as well, and maybe go out and somehow steal something in a tiebreaker game. Let's say Kalama wins, and neither Toledo doesn't lose to Winlock in week 9, and Wahkiakum doesn't lose to Winlock or Tudor Lake the next 2 weeks. Wahkiakum goes into the number 2 slot, so you'd have Kalama number 1. They face Mountain number 4, which looks like on Alaska. Wahkiakum would be the number 2. They'd get to host a playoff game, which that would be the first time in a while Wahkiakum gets to host a playoff game, and who would have expected that going into this season, aside from maybe you? And they would probably face Rainier, Washington, the Mountaineers. And Toledo would have to travel to Coastal number 3, which looks possibly like Ilwaco. And so that would put Toledo and Ilwaco again in a playoff matchup, which that rivalry.
Yes.
So that would be certainly another interesting one.
And McNulty wants one back on that too. He really, he didn't tell me that. I'm just going to clarify that, but that was certainly my feeling after speaking with him following Toledo's blowout win at Ilwaco early in the year.
Yeah, and speaking of Ilwaco, they have a big one this week. If they win against Acosta, they'll probably end up as the number 3 seed. And then they would travel, or they'd face River.
Josh is reading his notes. He's got it typed out. He just lost his.
If they're the number 3 seed, they would face Toledo because River 3. Oh no, I got that wrong. Yeah, I got that wrong. Because if Toledo's number 3, they would travel to Coastal number 2, not Coastal number 3.
Okay.
That's where I got that wrong. They would travel to Coastal number 2, which looks like South Bend, which beat Wahkiakum early in the season. I vote them in the top 10.
Yeah, South Bend seems like they beat about everybody this year.
Yeah, I mean, they only have the one loss to PWV, I believe. And that would mean Ilwaco, if they win this week, they would be the number 3 seed, and they would travel to Mountain number 2 at so that would be a tough road for them. Of course, you want to make the playoffs, and a loss this week likely puts them out.
Yeah.
So got to win that. And Tudor Lake, as long as if they beat Mossy Rock and lose to Wahkiakum, all they have to do is beat Mossy Rock this week, and they'll probably end up as the number 4 seed. Of course, their Week 10 reward is traveling to PL Willapa Valley.
I wouldn't count them out against PWV. I wouldn't necessarily. I think Toodles had a tough season, but I think a win over Mossy Rock could be some mental medicine there. There's a little Zoloft for them, or so to speak, right, to get them back in their groove and at this point too, it's also the healthier team with a serious advantage.
Yeah.
So.
That Tudor Lake defense has shown the past 2 years that it can really do some great things. So that's kind of where we stand with all that. So still a lot to play for, clearly. Our one team that's locked up a league championship already, Nacelle, they are the Coastal 1B champs. They will get a Week 10 bye and get to host a matchup the first week of state. So that's good for them. They do travel to Tohola in a non-league matchup Saturday, and then they face number 2 ranked Sunnyside Christian, which has destroyed lots of people this year. So that's a tough test in Week 9. Hopping over to Oregon, big one this week for Lewis and Clark League. They're both going to the playoffs. We know. I mean, they haven't solidified it, but let's just say it for all intents and purposes. They're both going to the playoffs, and it reseeds for state. So, you're gonna if you win the league, I believe you get the only thing you're guaranteed is you host a matchup. But the success of both those teams has shown that they're both gonna I think if they both win out, they're gonna host a matchup anyway. What this matters is who gets to hold the Lewis and Clark League crown. And Clatskanie has improved a lot this year. Yes. But I was at Rainier practice today, and they are fired up. Yeah, there's different air about them this week. And whether that's the Blodgetts being back in Clatskanie or a lot of talk surrounding Clatskanie's improvements, Rainier wants to prove something this week. And I think they could. I would think that I would imagine it'd be close because I think Clatskanie is pretty darn good. But a fired up Rainier is a tough Rainier to beat.
We got a question, or I specifically got a question a week or two ago. Why was Clatskanie given an A+ in the midseason rankings or grades, and Rainier was given an
A- or an A?
Yeah, a little bit lower. And one of the reasons, or the reason, was that Clatskanie has shown that they're so much better than expectation, and expectation does matter. Getting over or showing major improvement, that matters. And so if anybody was wondering about that, that's why. I still think Rainier wins.
I think Rainier wins. And if Rainier goes out and wins that first game against Saya, they probably get an A+ too. But this team has also since then shown me they are state championship contenders. I mean, this team, nobody in Rainier will say they're better than last year. Mike King today said they're closer. They're more tight-knit. They work harder. That's all good things to have in a football team come postseason.
And usually that means you're better than last year.
Usually. They won't say it. I think they are. Yeah. I mean, I think last year they were phenomenal. This team has been challenged more often this year. And when you're challenged, you stop worrying about the stats you put up. You stop worrying about the gaudy numbers you can put up against cupcakes.
Right.
You start worrying about how are we as a team. And Rainier's gotten challenged this year. Something they weren't able to do last year, aside from, unless a plane trip to Alaska is challenging.
You find enough money to get back in Alaska, could be. You lose your wallet, you could be in trouble.
So that is a huge one. I'll be at that one this week, this Friday. I'm pumped for it. I hope it's not raining so that I can be on the field rather than in the press box. But I hope it is raining so my pick of Toledo can be right for Pigskin Profits, because I am in last place, and that is no bueno. I am in last place by a lot.
Yeah. Josh is a loser.
Although I am disappointed in the people this week. They went 6-9. Yet
That's the first losing week for the people all season.
It's the first week they've had less than 10 wins. 10 correct picks. Wow. It's the lowest, aside from my week 2 5-10 week. It's the lowest week of the season, and yet nobody gained any ground on them because
they're so far ahead.
Well, because the two people that were closest both went Rick and Rem both went 7-8. So we're coming after you people, but tweet us your thoughts. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on Twitter. So Twitter's at TDN Preps. Instagram is TDN Preps Plus. Check out our Facebook page, TDN Preps Plus. Check out the website, tdnpreps.com. We're on YouTube as the Daily News Reporter. Tons of videos. I mean, loaded with, I think we have like 40 since the start of the season.
Yes, at least.
Yeah, so check all those things out.
I got one thing to add too. And if you have some suggestions on college football games, matchups that you'd like to vote on, do it a week in advance, but tweet us your suggestions, please.
Because Jason doesn't like my suggestions because he doesn't follow college football.
It's not just that. It's that there's been a Cal football game for like the last 4 weeks.
There's not a Cal this week?
Okay, maybe not this week, but the ones that have been done, there's been a Cal football game. And I told Josh this the first time I saw a Cal football game. Can't go Cal because they're going to break your heart.
And
I go with Cal, and they broke my heart. I lost.
That's just because Jason doesn't follow his gut.
My gut says stay away from Cal. I grew up going to Cal games. It's rest in peace, Mr. Tom Petty, heartbreaker.
And rest in peace, Wazoo and UW's college football playoff hopes. What a terrible week for Washington football that was.
Yeah.
No bueno. That's why you should follow high school football, because one loss won't put you out of the playoffs.
That's right. 4 losses in some cases.
Yeah. Castle Rock opened up at the season 0-5. They look like a playoff team. So that's it for us. Thanks to Sterling Auto Group for sponsoring the first, I think, 19 of the first 20. I don't know if we had a sponsor for the very first one. But they've been our sponsor all along. So thanks to Sterling Auto Group. And thanks to you guys for listening. And tweet us and find us at football games and tell us we're wrong. And we'll see you next week.
Hi, I'm here with Parker Reeves, our area of RA Long, the area's leading tackler. 93 tackles, 4.5 sacks officially. Really, in my mind, it's 6.5. And to put this into perspective defensively, the next area's next best tackler statistically is Corbin Burns of Kalama, who has 87 tackles. Mr. Reeves here also has 638 rush yards on 94 attempts, 6 touchdowns. You've been a major cog in the Lumberjacks, rushing attack, and really you've had a few really big and important runs in a couple games. I know you said before, that the offensive line has to do their job and that sort of thing too. But is there the offensive line? I'm guessing doesn't get the same kind of rush when you're running down the field, skirting, by defenders and getting into the end zone. What does that feel like for you?
I mean, obviously it's a blast every time. I love running the ball. Never really been a good receiver for catching the ball, so kind of just was always drawn to running the ball, and I have no problem hitting people, so it's just always fun.
There you go. Did you get a rush also when there's some gigantic linebacker running full speed at you, trying to figure out a way to make a miss? Is that exciting to you, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, it's all in the game. Everything in the game is really just fun. You're hitting people the whole time and no one's really judging you for it.
Right. Has there ever been a time where you've gotten defenses so frustrated where they just I know that the game plan might be to focus on different parts of the field, but where they just really decide, hey, we're just going to key in on Parker Reeves, and if the pass beats us, the pass beats us, but we can't let this guy's been beating us all day, and we gotta win this one.
I feel like Kelso did really good on stopping our run game overall. Other than that, not too many teams have keyed on us. Maybe Woodland a little bit, but overall it hasn't been too bad, or I haven't had problems really.
Okay. What's been the toughest game of the so far for 2A schools, league schools, this year to run against? Who's the hardest in the league?
Overall in 2A running wise, I thought that Woodland did all right on their run defense. Other than that, I don't know, probably Woodland.
Okay. What was so difficult? Was it just the speed of the players there, or is there something else?
Yeah, their linemen were firing off pretty good. They were quick, so that always helps and makes it harder to find holes.
Okay. Then your guys' season opener at home, that was a big one, I know, for you guys to establish kind of, your identity for the season, and also obviously for Coach James.
Mm-hmm.
It was a big deal. Kind of revisiting that now that we're, about 3/4 of the way through the season, how important was that win, and do you think it changed, or helped maybe develop the season for you guys?
Yeah, I think that first game really helped us out in that, all the players had a lot more trust in Rob. Not that we didn't trust him in the beginning, and then it gave us a big boost from only winning one game last year to come out and win that first game and hopefully springboard us to win more.
Right. And you guys obviously have one more.
Yeah.
After that, how much different did you guys feel as a team, heading into practice after that win than, say, the Monday or Tuesday the week prior?
We were excited all week because obviously it's first game, and of course for our seniors we were excited because senior season, but we were all happy before and after, and after winning that game I think it really gave us a confidence boost and hey, we actually can do something this year.
Right. And so it's pretty, I came out to practice somewhere about a week before that first game, and you could kind of tell when I was talking with Coach James that he just wasn't sleeping well, that he was putting everything he had into figuring out different things and looking at tape and that sort of thing. How much different did he come off in practice that next practice after the win? Was it kind of obvious that, this dude might actually have finally gotten some sleep?
Yeah, Rob, I don't know if you noticed, but he always brings rock stars around.
Yes.
And drinks them all the time. So during that first week, he was probably drinking at least 2 a day during practice or so. And then he still brings them to games, but not nearly as much as that first week.
Right. No, I definitely picked up on that, especially that 6:15 mark. You could see him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and chug it. And with going up this week, you guys have a big game. It's not technically a winner go home game, but it's certainly a control your own destiny game. How have you guys been approaching this week? From a mental standpoint and also from a physical, maintaining your health standpoint.
Overall, this week we've just been trying to be really focused. We've been hitting a lot more. Just trying to get into game mode already and forcing it through to Friday to get that win, hopefully.
Okay. And this is obviously a good team you're playing, and there's a lot of things that can happen. Is there one? First, let me ask: how much game tape have you guys watched so far? Have you guys watched much?
All of our players were supposed to watch at least one game film, if not more, and kind of try and key on some of the better players and see who they're going to go up against.
Okay. And have you noticed anything in your film study?
Number 5 is definitely a good runner for them, and our run defense is going to have to work hard to stop him, but I know we can do it. Other than that, they have a pretty good arm quarterback when he does throw.
Mm-hmm.
Their line seems to do pretty good for blocking. Other than that, they run a lot of lead and toss.
Okay. All right, so they like the outside power game?
Yeah.
Okay. How difficult is it as both a running back and a linebacker to... Let me ask you this actually first. What's tougher, A gap or B gap as far as run stopping goes?
For me personally, I don't tend to do a lot of A gap. We usually send our tackles A gap, but overall, I like B gap more just because I feel like I end up blitzing there a lot more, so I can shoot through faster.
Right. And I'm guessing for you, there probably tends to be a bigger hole.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And as a running back, what's your preference? Would you rather run around the center or run around the edge there?
I like running lead, but our main play that I've really ran since the beginning was that toss.
Mm-hmm.
Toss has been great for me and working good for the team.
I've noticed that. It seems like a couple that I've seen like a 67-yarder and other big runs, and it seems like they all come outside.
Mm-hmm.
Have you figured out a particular reason for that, or?
I think our seal blocking, like I said in one of my other interviews, have been amazing. And other than that, I think just like our overall speed of our team has been able to get around that edge faster than possibly our other, like the defense.
Okay. And with having you guys, the tackles have played really well. It certainly, I think anybody who's watched a game or two, you guys certainly hasn't gone unnoticed, especially, it's really illustrated in the run game.
Yeah.
Talk about those two guys and how much you've seen them kind of grow in the last year or two.
Not Mason Baker, sorry. Shoot, I just forgot his name. Ryan Baker. Sorry.
Okay.
He has grown a lot. Like he's really tall,
Mm-hmm.
so his big problem in the beginning was always standing up on blocks. But now he's really worked on that and stays low and really holds his block well. Even though he might not be the strongest guy, he can still move people around pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And then Josiah Gonzalez, he's been around since I started playing, and he just gets after it. I mean, I couldn't be happier with him. He's always going hard. And then our last tackle who's been shifting in some more is Mario. He's been doing a good job. I haven't seen him play much before this year.
Okay.
Because I think this might be his first year out, but he's been working hard too, and we've all been helping him however we can.
Okay. Has he been playing left interior a lot?
No, he's mainly been playing right tackle.
Oh, okay. This is Mario?
Yeah.
Okay. Who's been playing left interior most of the time? Left guard
Left
there?
interior. I think that's Johnny Stevens.
Okay.
Or he might be right. It's either Johnny Stevens or who else been playing there? Not Willie Johnson. He's out on injury right now.
It might have been because the
Maybe.
two games I saw were early. It was a Civil War.
It might be
And then the
Willie
season
Johnson then.
Okay.
Or no, Blair Smith. Sorry.
Okay.
That's who it is.
Okay.
Yeah, he's been working really hard too.
He stood. Yeah, the guy stood out to me right away. That left tackle, left guard combo. It seemed like they worked in such a tandem, and so. Yeah, so kudos to those guys. Forward that on for me.
Yeah.
So with is your senior season, how I'm sure you want any win, but is this Friday any more special and important to you being a senior?
Of course. I mean, this is probably the last chance for me to play on Memorial Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
It couldn't be a bigger game. It's homecoming. I don't know, I'm just trying to go get another win on our field and try to end it on a good note because I know that it's the last time we'll be out there.
Okay. And how important in a big game do you feel like having that home crowd there is? Do you feel like that can be a difference maker in any game, having your fans behind you or a larger group of people cheering for you right there?
I mean, it's always nice to have fans. I think it always pumps people up a little more, maybe gets them a little more motivated. Our fans have always been great, and they back us really well.
Okay. Is there ever, do you guys ever feel like you get, I know a lot of coaches like to preach, the outside is the outside. You have to focus on what's on the field and that sort of thing. But has there ever been a time where you've gotten an extra jolt of energy from a crowd?
Only one memorable time this year, probably, which was when I hit a Woodland kid real hard, and I heard the whole crowd yelling. And I mean, that was pretty exciting and got me kind of hyped up. But other than that, I personally don't listen to the crowd a lot. Not that I'm not happy that they're there, but I just kind of tone them out and focus on the game.
Okay. How much do the padding in your helmet and just the helmet in general, how much does that tone out things for you also?
I personally don't think it tones out too much. I mean, there's still like the holes in the side for you to hear and stuff, so I don't think it's too much.
Okay. So the whole one thing I noticed at your guys' practice in August was the inflatable padding, and that was you guys, right? Am I thinking of, maybe I'm thinking of Woodland? I could be thinking of Woodland.
In what, like our helmets?
In your helmets, yeah.
Oh, I don't know anything.
That wasn't you guys. My mistake. Okay. For some reason, I thought it was you guys, but it must have been Woodland.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they had it. It's kind of like it worked in a same concept as like a basketball, pumping up a basketball.
Mm-hmm.
You just had a needle, poke it in, pump it up, and it kind of fits to the player's head.
Was it like an extra insert, or just that's how the helmets worked?
They had it was built into the helmet, I think, because there was you could pump it up from outside the shell.
Okay, yeah, our helmets have that too.
Okay, right. Okay,
Yeah.
so it was you guys. All right. That is new to me.
Oh,
When I was a kid, it was just foam, whatever material they used, and it was wrapped in little leather. I'm sure it was fake leather, plasticky stuff. And how much have you had experience with that old padding I'm talking about at all?
Maybe in like middle school, but not in high school. I've always had the pumped up helmets.
Okay. How snug do those get on your head?
They can get snug. I mean, it just depends on how much air you put in them and then how tight your chin strap is.
Okay. Do you remember enough from middle school to really make a comparison with how comfortable and how much the helmet moves around between the two styles?
I mean, obviously the pumped up fits a little tighter and stays on you more snug and less chance for like your chin strap sliding off or anything like that. So in that aspect, I'd say they're better. The old ones were nice too, just because you knew it was going to be the same every time. You didn't have to worry about air leaking or anything like that.
Okay, all right. That's one thing I know in this day and age where kind of player safety, and especially there's the concussions being, or just head injuries in general, kind of being highlighted. And I thought that was really cool to see that change, because I don't know what science says, but from a common sense perspective, when I see that, it's like, yeah, having an air bubble around your head, inside the helmet probably is a lot better than just foam padding, which frankly doesn't do that much. Yeah. So what is it like to take a direct hit to the helmet? How much do you kind of feel the helmet move? And
I mean, I wouldn't say the helmet moves a ton, but like you can definitely like feel it through your body, and it kind of not like shocks you, but almost like stuns you. It just depends on like how hard you get hit and if you drop your crown into theirs.
Right. No, I know exactly what you mean. Where it almost is like an electric shock a little bit. Yeah. A little jolt there. Have you? I guess kind of one or two more questions on this subject, because it's always been something that the progress of technology and science growing together to me is always interesting. At least with what's the most, maybe not gruesome, but like the scariest head or neck injury that you've seen on the field?
Mainly like when ball carriers or something will run the ball and they'll get like bent back from getting like hit so hard, and maybe their head gets under their back or something and almost like bent back, and
when it hits the ground.
Yeah,
you're talking about.
And you're just afraid that they're gonna like snap their neck or something like that.
Right.
Other than that, I don't know. I feel like the pad, like shoulder pads, kind of keep your neck straight as for the most part.
Okay.
I don't know other than that.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, one thing I got my brother-in-law is from Australia, and he grew up playing rugby and played semi-pro rugby, or what. He actually came over here when he met my sister-in-law. It was over here on the West Coast, and he was playing in a rugby league. They would tour from like Southern California up to Oregon or something like that, and so. He likes to poke fun. Oh, American football's weak. They need all this padding. Be a real man. And then, like he said, but how come rugby players don't get as many head injuries like this? Because there's no evidence that they do. they might, but there's just no evidence. And so I hypothesize that the padding actually for a long time actually was a detriment because it could be used as a weapon, but also you feel safer. I always did. I don't know if that's the case. Yeah,
for sure.
You feel safer with it, so how much does it help? I mean, when you hit the ground, I'm sure you know what it's like to fall off a bike or something.
Yeah.
How much different does modern shoulder pads and leg pads and all that stuff? How much does that change the way you fall to the ground, at full speed?
It changes it totally, really. I mean, it basically gives you an extra cushion, and you just hop right back up after you hit the ground. It's not usually a big deal unless you're tweaked in some funny way or something.
Okay. Is it like falling in a jumper almost, or not quite to that extent?
Probably not quite to that extent. I mean, it's almost like you hit the ground, but then you just don't really feel it. Like, you hit something, but it's not anything terrible.
All right. Well, kind of to the end of the interview here, I guess I'll give you any last thoughts for the people. I guess I think they're going to be hearing this either Thursday or even Friday morning. So, thoughts on the game Friday night?
I mean, I'm hoping that we're going to come out and play some good football, smash mouth football, and do everything that we did last week. I mean, our guys have it in us, and I know we can win this game. Hopefully we get to playoffs.
All right, and go Jacks, right?
Oh, of course.
Of course. All right, thanks for listening. It's Parker Reeves here, RA Long Football, shooting for a win tonight. I sat down with Parker Reeves, and he had a lot to talk about, actually. A lot of insight into RA Long Football, what's made them successful, some of the points of growth this season. Last year, 1 win. This year, they started off the season with the win under first-year head coach Rob James, and we talk a bit also, excuse me, about some of the new age equipment that players are getting to use, which is something I took notice of in August. So here it is.
Hi, welcome to Preps Plus Podcast, episode 20. I'm Joshua Hart, sports editor here at the Daily News. I'm here with Jason Leskiw, Preps reporter. Say hello, Jason.
What's up?
So they hear your voice. We are here this week to break down all of the action coming up. Last 2 weeks of the football season means there's lots of playoff implications at stake this week. I believe we just have one team officially locked into the playoffs. That's Nacelle. And I don't believe any teams have officially been eliminated yet. So lots of action ahead. We also have an interview with Parker Reeves of RA Long, our area's leading tackler, on tap for you as well. We'll start off with our biggest school to break down playoff action, and that's Kelso. Last week they had a huge win over Prairie. A.J. Hoggett came back. Tell me a little bit about what A.J. Hoggett brings to this team, Jason.
A lot. The guy has a heck of an arm. It's funny, he was warming up at halftime 2 weeks ago over playing Mountain View, and him and Quentin Nelson side by side. And Quentin Nelson's a really good athlete and a pretty good quarterback, but the difference watching Nelson throw next to Hoggett it's a huge difference, and I think that will really and keep in mind in that game it was an overtime game. Mountain View being the reigning league champ, Kelso, it was neck and neck the entire way, and the difference for Kelso, the ultimate difference I think was not being effective enough in the red zone. And with Hoggett, the guy can make all the throws you need a quarterback to make, and they execute in the red. There's no doubt in my mind if they had that back with Hoggett, they would execute in the red zone, with 80% efficiency. So.
Yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong with the school's all-time leading passer.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of good quarterbacks